Uncle Jimmy felt as if he was watching Beauty and the Beast and the movie had reached its wondrous ending. He could not believe that the girl who was standing in front of his eyes and challenging him was the same girl he just saw entering inside the bedroom with an ugly black burqa on. His eyes in awe and his mouth wide open, he kept staring at the beauty in front of him in a dream he wanted to dream forever. He felt like he had lived before in this strangely beautiful dream he did not want to wake up from. The first thing that hit his heart and caused it to melt within his chest was her eyes. Her eyes were large and narrowed at their corners, graced with twin crescent eyebrows. The pupils of her eyes were emerald green in a pool of porcelain white. She had a perfect nose and her cheeks were glowing from an internal glow not originating from the harsh ceiling lights. Her nose resembled that of Cleopatra, the beloved mistress of the Roman Emperor Julius Caesar. Her skin was fair and a golden shade resembling daffodils. She was neither tall nor short. Her waist was narrow and beautifully proportioned. Uncle Jimmy's eyes, unlike the rest of his body, did not rest, darting up and down the siren a mere arm's length away from him. Her beauty troubled his heart and her body heightened his sexual desire. She was the first girl in whom he could see beauty and charm were equally divided and wonderfully united. For a few seconds, he forced his eyes to rest on the lower part of the statuesque before him. Her narrow waist gradually widened and extended into curved hips accentuating perfectly shaped tantalizing legs. Her thighs and hips were openly exposed to a maximum effect with just a touch of her buttocks perched in an irresistible pose. Her legs gradually reduced in size until they ended resting in spotted leopard shoes. Her feet were uncovered just above her ankles. Jimmy's eyes then traveled upward slowly until they rested on her thighs again. The burqa girl obliged by turning around and offering him a command performance of her rear end. Trouble stirred within his soul as he could not find his better judgment. He averted his gaze to force his eyes upward so as to keep his sanity. Scanning her eyes, eyebrows, mouth, lips, nose, chin, and rosy cheeks, his eyes failing to stay focused traveled back and forth roving to and fro from her chest, breasts, shoulders, arms, hands, hair, thighs, hips, buttocks, and legs. Jimmy was lost. "Uncle Jimmy," said Amrita Khan with her head held high, "look at me now and tell me whether you still want to call me a liar? You still think that I did not win the Miss India and Miss World crown?" Uncle Jimmy remained silent, speechless. His quietness had strong reason. While the beautiful visual effects of her essence stood before him, he did not remove his eyes from her for a second. He just wanted to stare at her in her swimsuit and admire her beauty and attractiveness forever. He did not even bat an eye. From the time he took a deep breath and exhaled Subhanallah, or Glory be to God, he had not blinked even once. Amrita repeated her challenge twice before her Uncle Jimmy came out of his involuntary bliss, convinced that maybe he wasn't actually dreaming promised virgins of paradise. "You are such a beautiful girl. If you had not been crowned Miss World, I will make you Queen of the Universe. You are very, very, very beautiful indeed. Your beauty is beyond description. You are marvelous. You are gorgeous. I thought I would never say that about another woman besides my wife. Thank you, Uncle Jimmy. Whatever I have told you about myself is true. I have never lied to you and I will never lie to you. I do not want to show my face because I don't want to reveal my true identity. Besides that, I don't trust men. I have had very bad experiences with them. Men just want to use the woman for their body and they don't care how much pain they cause to her." Jimmy felt her words like sharp-pointed arrows aimed right at his heart and piercing even to the dividing of his soul. Even so, he hid his feelings and strove to correct her wrong notions about all men. "I am sorry to hear that you have had bad experiences with men, but not all men are evil. Some men are good and gentle with women. I have never met a man as good as you. You are the only man that I have met who is prepared to help a helpless girl like me without expecting something in return from her. That is why I like you so much. When you decided to leave me and walk away from my life today, I was crushed. My mother forbade me from revealing my true identity to anyone. I am not supposed to show my face to anyone, but because you are a very kind and loving uncle, I am forced to reveal my true identity to you. I don't want to lose your friendship. Once again, thank you for your trust and your nice words, young lady. However, I don't think by showing your face at the home care facility people are going to recognize you and inform Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists about you. I assure you that nothing would happen to you in this country. This is America and there are no terrorists here. There are laws to protect citizens and the public, and the police force are great in this country. Okay, Uncle Jimmy, I am going to trust you and I am going to reveal my face at the home care place. But, I am not going to show my face in public. I am not going to go against the words of my mother. Whatever my mother told me to do in the past was for my own good. I have no doubt that your mother has given you wonderful advice. But let's get back to the fact that you have to work and support yourself in this country. I am ready to work at the home care business because I would love to help others, especially those who can't help themselves. I started building a 17-story building to provide shelter for the street children in Mumbai, but Dawood Ibrahim's evil terrorists placed 5 bombs in the construction site and destroyed my building before it was finished. Jimmy decided to believe anything the former burqa girl might say about herself in the future. At this point, if she had said she was the daughter of the late Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, he would have believed her. Or even if she had claimed that she is a love child of the American President Donald Trump, whom he fathered in his trip to India, Jimmy would have believed that too. He had his doubts though about a 17-story building in a town that had the highest real estate prices in the world. He knew that, even the daughter of the richest man in India might not have that much money to build such a huge project in a city like Mumbai. And what made it more incredible was her claim that she was building it for the poor children of Mumbai. Jimmy was born and brought up in a chawl area in Mumbai before God had mercy on his misery and granted him the lifetime opportunity of emigrating to the promised land, which each and every Indian dreams to come to. When he was struggling to make money to feed his family, he had never heard of any of the rich and famous caring enough to build a homeless shelter for the street children of Mumbai. With the exception of Mother Teresa in Calcutta, it seemed even more implausible for someone at such a young age to attempt such a feat. However, this time Jimmy decided not to challenge Amrita's claim. Nothing about her so far was normal. He was still captivated by the awesome presence of standing face to face in front of Miss India, Miss World, and a Bollywood film actress. When Jimmy remained silent, Amrita thought that he was casting doubt upon her again. She knew that, this time she could do nothing to prove her claim. Therefore, she shut her mouth and pouted, plunging into one of her sulky moods. Jimmy could not help but to discern her mood. He stood up, knelt down in front of her and clasped his hands together, and asked for her forgiveness. She misunderstood his intentions and thought that he was just making fun of her, not believing in his heart that she really had tried to build a home for the poor children of India. She turned away and began to weep. Uncle Jimmy felt bad, not clear about all that was happening except that he had hurt her feelings again. He stood up and gently turned her around. He drew her into his arms and hugged her tightly. Her weeping stopped and he could feel her arms wrapping around him. He felt a tinge of apprehensiveness when he realized that she was hugging his back and no longer hugging him as her uncle, but as a beloved would hug her lover. Jimmy found himself in a fix. He did not know where to turn. He did not know whether to follow his mind or his heart. He was in a dilemma. His mind was trying to convince him to remain faithful to his wife, but his heart was pulling him inexorably in another direction like a magnet. He played with the fire for so long and now it became impossible for him to extinguish the flame. Giving in, he threw caution to the wind and allowed his heart to take control and lead the way. He took the initiative and kissed her on her lips. Inwardly, he hoped that she would push him away and rebuke him. That would make it so much more easier for him at least. Instead, he felt the sweetness of her tongue gliding ever so softly into his mouth with gentle strokes. He gave in to her tender affectionate kisses and the aroma of her tongue touching his. He felt her hands clasping onto him ever so tightly as he caressed her smooth velvety skin. His hands were reaching everywhere and his touch could not rest for 1 second on any one part alone. These were indescribable moments. He caressed her delicate body and eased the top of her swimsuit from off her shoulders. Gradually her breasts became fully visible and he began to fondle them in both his hands and kiss her all over her face. Giving in to him, she twisted her top and unhooked the clasps, letting it fall to the floor. Only the red bottom to her swimsuit was left to be shed. The soon-to-be intimate uncle could hear gentle murmurs in response to his large probing hands and firm but gentle grasps. He could not hold back any longer. He lifted her up, carried her inside her bedroom and laid her on the bed. Amrita Khan had no idea that making love with a man could be such a wonderful thing. A new Amrita was born again and the old Ifat Khan, who suffered through years of rape and abuse, died and was gone forever. For the very first time in her life, she allowed a man to have sex with her. He wasn't just a man, but an expert in love-making. What she enjoyed more than anything was the sweet talk he whispered into her ears while he was making love to her. It was a very different direction from the path she had experienced during the course of her life. Neither of the two evil men who had kidnapped her and abused her had ever said "I love you," neither did she love either one of them. For them she was a body to enjoy and nothing else. They couldn't care less if she died in the process. Amrita's sexual awakening made her wish she had known this kind of love was possible. How different things could have been. She wished she could make love with her lover every day and all night. She hoped that he would remain her lover forever. She had never loved a man the way she loved him. He was gentle, loving, and kind. She began to change her attitude towards men and sex. She began to love sex with a man for the very first time in her life. Amrita liked him from the day they had met. She liked his kindly big heart nature. He had gone to a lot of trouble to make sure she wasn't without food and shelter, or work she could do to help others. She wondered what would have happened to her if she had not met him in front of the prison. She kept asking herself why he was helping her. She had not revealed her face or her body to him. She did not disclose to him that she won the Miss India title or that she was the reigning Miss World. She did not tell him that she had millions of dollars in her account. She did not promise him anything in return for what he was doing to help her. She kept making things difficult for him, but still he did not forsake her. He promised her that he would not leave her until she was settled and on her own. He paid for her first month's rent. He drove her in his taxi from place to place without charging her a single dollar. For 3 days, he neglected his work and dedicated time to helping her. She enjoyed his presence and to bear his absences were difficult indeed. She kept thinking about him at night when she was all alone. When he misunderstood her hesitation to discard her veil, and threatened to abandon her, her heart broke at the thought of him leaving. She decided to do whatever she could to stop him from walking out the door and out of her life. For that reason, she put on her swimsuit and appeared before him semi-nude, aware of the temptation she was putting in front of him. Whatever it took, she just did not want him to leave. She wanted him to be with her forever. Longing for his love as she melted into his arms, she embraced his love as something beyond what she was able to comprehend. It felt so good being held by strong arms. When he began to kiss her, she yielded her mind, body, and soul to all the possibilities love had to offer. She could feel him inside her, penetrating every feeling and emotion she had. No one had ever pierced this deep down inside her very existence. The intimate, indefinable pleasure of his soft caresses hypnotized her body into submission. A heightened arousal of her raw nakedness sent a wave of electrifying currents throughout her body from her clitoris to the nipples of her breasts. Amrita never knew a man could give a woman such wonderful feelings of pleasure. When he lowered her swimsuit and exposed her breasts, his hands were all over her. She felt like shouting for him to stop making her feel all these new feelings, but she didn't want him to stop making her feel what every woman should feel. Her voice gave her away, creating pangs of pleasure from a voice she didn't know she had. She was being transformed into an out-of-body experience and reincarnated as a new creature of passion and desire. He could do whatever he wanted. While he was carrying her in his arms, his lips never left hers, and her lips did not release his. When they reached the bed, she felt every part of his body covering her. She could not move 1 inch to the right or left. She could not get away from him even if she wanted to. Their bodies were woven together in a fabric of love and pleasure. At the moment his lips left and came close to her ear, he began to whisper words she had never heard from any human being. They were lyrics of love and full of poetic, passionate appeals to a woman trapped in a young girl's body, to a young girl that never had a chance to develop into womanhood. She remembered softly murmuring over and over, "I love you too, Uncle Jimmy. I love you." She had never known a man to say, "I love you," except in love scenes of movies and role-playing with actors and actresses. Each time her lover whispered those words into her ear, she echoed them back, releasing a new onslaught of wild, untamed aggressiveness in him. Never before had she known the extraordinary joy of hearing a man say, "I love you so much." Her life opened to what true love was in a realm of sexual pleasure and romantic lure. The stark contrast of this new love and her old life was not lost on Amrita. Her past taught her that sex was essentially the act of intercourse between the physically superior male, forcing his will upon that of the female. All that she had ever experienced in lovemaking was physical abuse and wrenching pain. Her first education in sex was watching animals fight and subdue one another. Her next lesson witnessed a man openly exposing himself, and then her mother being raped and left for dead in the Saudi Arabian desert. Being but a child, she learned a true test of endurance as a rude awakening ended in her losing consciousness. From then on, it was only a matter of geography, different times, different locations and different men, but the same demeaning and humiliating pattern of abuse, pain and ill treatment. Oh, but now, in this time, place and location, things were not only different, but with a man who cared enough to make her feel like she really was queen of the universe. His hand slid down her panties and began to gently massage between her labia, rubbing her clitoris. He was driving her out of her mind and setting her body on fire, slow and deliberate, not wanting her to climax too quickly. He wanted to please her as much as she pleased him by her exquisite beauty and ravishing body. It was a fire that could not be quenched except by him inside her. Amrita became impatient and did not wait for her lover to take the next step and began to undress him, unbuttoning his shirt. He withdrew to take off his shirt and remove his pants. She got rid of her underwear and before he could resume, she took the initiative and mounted her lover's body. With his penis firmly protruding upward, she grabbed him with both hands and penetrated her vagina, screaming and pleading, "Oh, love me. Please love me. I need it so bad. Oh, please love me." Being inexperienced in lovemaking and approaching a new horizon, she just did whatever felt good, holding her breasts while he tenderly kissed and suckled her, rubbing his head, shoulders and arms, wanting it to last forever. She had never allowed herself to feel anything during sex, but today was an exception. Her rapture was filled with exaltation and indescribable pleasure. It was rare that a human being could experience such pleasure and joy, feelings and emotions, after having been used as a sex object from a very young age. She was not aware of her potential to feel so deeply, to be aroused so fully and to please and be pleased. Now with a lover for the very first time, she was feeling contractions and orgasmic sensations rippling throughout her body while he released every ounce of love he had to give. The strong harmonious vibrations radiating from her lover's body, made her explode in intense ecstasy and reach unreachable heights. Lovemaking wasn't the only pleasure the new lovers enjoyed together that day. Being satisfied from their newly discovered fountain of love, they began to whisper passionate sweet nothings lying beside each other professing their love. Amrita Khan told Uncle Jimmy that she had fallen in love with him from the very first time they met. Uncle Jimmy admitted that her childlike innocence attracted him to her before he ever saw her face. He confessed, he had tried desperately to resist falling in love with her. He had decided to run away from her forever, but her unmatchable beauty made him remain captive to her. She asked him to promise he would never forsake her or try to run away from her ever again. He promised he would always remain and he would never run from her love, not for a lifetime and neither in the hereafter. She also promised him that she would never ever look at any other man. However, their confessions of love were interrupted every now and then by kissing and hugging, which led to more lovemaking. Each time they made love, it brought them closer together in a uniting bond of unending love and fervent passions. If it weren't for the human instinct to eat and drink, the lovers would have remained in bed hugging, kissing, caressing, fondling, and making love, forgetting there was a world outside the bedroom. That day, Jimmy taught Amrita how to prepare some Indian dishes. She admitted that she had not been taught how to cook from a young age. All she remembered was how she cooked simple meals for herself and her brothers growing up. The cabbie turned out to be an excellent cook. He promised his newly beloved, he would teach her how to cook a variety of delicious Indian dishes. After hand-feeding each other, as in Indian culture, the lovers decided to celebrate their first day together as a couple by going to a movie theater. Amrita tried on all 5 of her beautiful dresses that she bought the previous day. For every dress she put on, she would parade in front of her lover and each one made her look more gorgeous and sexy than the other. Each time, he would embrace her in his arms and tell her how beautiful she was and how much she pleased him just to look at her. Finally, her lover chose what he considered the loveliest among all the dresses for her to wear. Nevertheless, Amrita Khan was determined to remain faithful to her mother's advice, and hence refused to step out of her apartment without putting on her black burqa on top of her beautiful outfit. The lovers slipped into a wonderful daily routine after they had confessed their love for each other. On the following day, Jimmy took his beloved to the Romanian woman and she was hired without incident. Amrita wasn't willing to accept payment, but the Romanian woman refused to have her work as a volunteer. She was scared that Amrita might sue her later on and accuse her of making her work without pay. She had a bad experience with a Filipino couple who helped her in her house for a few months and then took her to court accusing her of maltreatment and making them work like slaves in her home without paying them. Therefore, Amrita was compelled to work for a wage. She decided to work only 4 hours a day. Following this new schedule of events, Jimmy would visit his beloved each morning at her apartment and have breakfast with her. Then, he would take his new love to work. After that, he would tend to his cabbie service for 4 hours until his beloved finished her part-time job. He would then go back and pick her up and take her somewhere in the city where they would both enjoy the rest of the day. The lovers would dine at restaurants or, when the opportunity presented itself, travel to out-of-state casino destinations. One of Amrita's favorite places was the swimming pool. She told her lover that she knew how to swim and enjoyed it a lot. Ifat Khan had been taught swimming lessons by an Iranian woman when she was kept imprisoned in the villa of her first evil captor in Tehran. When she was held captive by the wicked film director in India, he used to make her swim for his amusement. She now decidedly had the enjoyment of swimming with an added dimension of flaunting her body while in a bikini. Jimmy, of course, had absolutely no complaints. She bought a dozen swimsuits and would always pack one in her bag when she went out. Whenever she entered the swimming pool facilities, she would be dressed in her black burqa. Once she entered the changing room, she would put on her bikini and emerge as a different girl. Some workers at the pool facility and female visitors noticed her strange behavior and wondered what kind of a hypocrite she was. Amrita's second favorite place was obviously the public movie theater. Her lover took her every Tuesday and Thursday to watch the latest movies featuring Indian films. After watching the first movie showcase, she decided never to miss any new premieres on the big screen. She enjoyed sitting by her lover, watching the dancing and romantics of Indian films, which was generally a prerequisite for all Indian films. While they were sitting together, she loved to feel her lover's arms around her, his hand on her leg or holding her hand. It gave her a great sense of togetherness and protection and enhanced their foreplay. Her lover's touch in the darkness of the theater always stimulated her sexually and made her ready for him. When they returned to her apartment, her lover would carry her in his arms and take her directly to the bedroom and make love to her. Interestingly, the designated movie day at the theater would turn into Lover's Lane and a prelude to Love Unlimited. Essentially, that became the lovers' routine during the weekdays. Saturdays and Sundays were a little different. Without the need to work, they would occupy their time by preparing food dishes. After preparing their favorite Indian dishes, they would eat together. Amrita loved to be pampered by her lover. He would make her sit on his lap and then hand-feed her. Her lover would cut the peelings off an apple and make her eat it from one end and he would eat from the other end until their mouths met in a kiss. On their weekend of leisure, they spent time in another favorite activity, which was taking baths together. Whenever they took a bath together, they would end up making love inside the bathtub. Sometimes, the lovers would go to a nearby town or city and spend time at the beach or in a public park. Amrita had never been to a beach in all her life until she met Jimmy. Her modus operandi did not change. She would travel to whatever beach Uncle Jimmy brought her to in the same black burqa until she reached the ladies' washroom. She would then leave the washroom in a sexy bikini and assume the role of the sexiest girl on the beach. Her beautiful body would make every pair of male eyes pop out of its socket. The hot sun and warm water of the beach would always make Amrita feel the urge for sex. Their beach frolicking would inevitably end up in a hotel room, where they would shower and end up in bed together. The 3 months of bliss whisked by for Amrita Khan and her wonderful lover. For her, she had just reached a new plateau in life. She had never enjoyed life or understood the power of love until she met her Uncle Jimmy and fallen in love with him. He gave her the most wonderful days of her life. She loved him with all her very being. In a short time, he became everything to her. She could tolerate anything and sacrifice everything in life in order to have him with her forever. Amrita wasn't bothered that Jimmy had a wife and family. She had not been taught any morals in life. She was born a Muslim, but in reality, she was an irreligious girl, bordering on being an agnostic. She had absorbed no family values and hadn't a clue what kind of commitment marriage entailed. She knew that her lover had a wife and children, but she had seen none of them. She thought that every man in the world was allowed to have more than one wife. She remembered her Saudi husband used to have 3 wives besides her. She had recollected that Mahmud Khan used to have another woman while he imprisoned her in his farmhouse and secretly married her as a second Muslim wife. Nevertheless, Uncle Jimmy was the one who brought up the fact that they should consider getting married. He told her that they could not live as lovers continuously. In actuality, Jimmy was worried that Amrita might leave him as soon as her mother arrived from India. Amrita had already told Jimmy that her Hindu mother wanted her to marry her cousin brother who was living in the same city. Jimmy knew as well as any Indian that no Indian woman would allow her daughter to marry a man who was as old as her father. Moreover, he knew that her mother would not agree for her daughter to marry a man who was already married and had children. In order to prevent such an unpleasant and abrupt end to their love affair, Jimmy decided to marry Amrita before her mother flew in from India. Another important factor that led Jimmy to think of marrying Amrita was the fact that she was already pregnant. He discovered too late that she was 3 months along. Of course, the issue Jimmy grappled with was how to marry Amrita when he already legally married to one wife. Jimmy never missed a single night at home with his Indian wife and their children. His secret love affair with Amrita remained hidden from his family. He did not want to divorce his wife or let her know about his affair. At wit's end, he approached an Islamic imam and discussed his problem with him. The imam advised him to keep his first wife and marry his young girlfriend. He told him that Islam permits a man to marry up to 4 wives at the same time. He reassured him that Muslims practiced polygamy in all of Europe and America. He also cited other non-Muslim countries. The imam gave him 2 choices: live in adultery or marry his girlfriend according to the Holy Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. He also posed the question of which was the greater evil, disobeying the standards for a true Muslim or the infidel system of secular marriage. The imam asked him to choose between that which is right according to the Sharia law of Allah or the American laws, which forbade polygamy while permitting a man to sleep with any number of women without marrying them. It was either follow a man-made law which presently allows homosexual marriages or obey a divine law that forbids the same, but allows the man to marry 4 women and the woman to marry only 1 man. Since the imam made such a compelling argument, Jimmy agreed to the idea of taking a second wife. He discussed this with Amrita. He explained that since she was already carrying his child, they should get married before she delivered her baby, failing which, the Muslim Indian community would treat them as adulterers and consider their baby a bastard. Amrita told Jimmy that whatever would keep her with him she was more than ready to do. Even if Jimmy had not asked her to marry him, Amrita would not have cared what the Muslim Indian community might say. So long as she was able to spend her days with him, she would be content. She remembered that the Muslim community in Saudi Arabia did not bother to condemn the old man who thied her when she was 7 and started to rape her when she was 9. And when she appeared before the Islamic court at the age of 11 with a baby in her womb, the Sharia court did not rescue her from her abuser and rapist, but gave him the right to continue imprisoning her and raping her. Therefore, Amrita said to her boyfriend, "Let the Indian Muslim community go to hell." She told him further that she did not care what any damned Muslim in America was going to say about her baby when he was born. Muslims called the rape of a 9-year-old female by a 54-year-old man marriage and sex between lovers adultery. Furthermore, their Quran allows and sanctions underage brides. Surat al-Talaq 65:4. In the end, Amrita agreed to the marriage because Jimmy reminded her of the fact that, legality aside, her mother would probably force them to part the moment she arrived from India and compel her to marry the person of her choice. The marriage of Amrita Khan and her lover took place shortly after they decided to wed. By the way, Amrita Khan did not know that her lover was a Muslim like her and that his real name was Jamal Khan until the imam of the mosque came to her apartment and conducted their marriage contract. Jamal preferred to be called Jimmy for social reasons. When he arrived newly in the States, he discovered that his Muslim name Jamal Khan was associated in the minds of many non-Muslims with terrorism. So, when he began to work as a cabbie he kept telling people, "My name is Khan but I am not a terrorist." However, that behavior did not make much difference. So, finally he decided to tell people his name was Jimmy, and that saved him a lot of trouble. After their marriage, Amrita did not need to change her last name to Khan because her husband already had the same family common among Muslims. On the wedding day, the newly wedded couple decided to do something special to celebrate their marriage. They planned to spend 3 days together in a beautiful hotel. The lovely bride agreed to fulfill the heart's desire of her bridegroom, and she stepped outside her apartment without her Islamic burqa. She put on her wedding gown and walked hand in hand with her bridegroom. Jimmy agreed to spend 3 nights away from his first wife for the first time since they had been married. He made excuses and fooled his first wife into believing he had a 3-day mandatory meeting for taxi drivers in a nearby city so he could spend time honeymooning with his second wife. During those 3 days, Jimmy took his lovely bride around the city and toured many vacation spots. The newlywed couple visited almost every major place of popular entertainment available to them during their 3 days honeymoon. Everything she desired and dreamed about in life, Amrita was now enjoying with her new husband. They ate the best food, watched the most interesting and exciting movies, saw the most beautiful places, and basically enjoyed unbridled sex. In short, the new bride, Amrita Khan, indulged in a cloud of blissfulness. If a human being could worship another human being, Amrita and Uncle Jimmy would have worshipped each other. After their 3 days of honeymoon, Amrita came up with the idea of buying her own house and turning it into a beautiful love nest. During their honeymoon, she revealed her hidden treasure to her husband and told him that she had over $100 million in her overseas accounts. At first, Jimmy was hesitant to accept her proposal. He advised her to wait until her Hindu mother arrived from India and then she should seek her advice before she took such a big step. Nevertheless, Amrita insisted that she wanted to live with her beloved husband in their own house and wait for their baby to be born where they could live happily together. Amrita told Jimmy that her Hindu mother loved her so much and she would never stop her from doing something that was good for her. Jimmy was worried that his wife's Hindu mother might accuse him of using her young daughter and manipulating her into marriage to get access to her money and property and to purchase a mansion for him. He was painfully aware of the huge age difference between him and his second wife, and of her seemingly childish nature. Jimmy realized that he might be taken to court for influencing a young girl who was as old as his daughter and taking advantage of her youth and immaturity and beguiling her in the name of love. Nonetheless, Amrita refused to accept all the objections and worries of her new husband and was determined she would indeed buy a house for them to live in. The house that Amrita finally decided on was chosen from a selection of homes on the market listed by a real estate agency. It had a market value of $5 million, which made Jimmy balk. He suggested a more moderate home of lesser value, but she refused to listen to him. In order to make her come to her senses, Jimmy threatened to leave her if she did not listen to him. Something he said he would never do cut deep down into her heart, and made her drop to her knees and cry like a baby. Jimmy, as usual, backed down and begged her to forgive him because he could not bear to see her unhappy and in tears. Naturally, Amrita Khan got her way and bought her own house in the United States of America. She spent another $500,000 furnishing and decorating it. After a couple of months, from the day she got married to her lover, Amrita moved from her apartment to her new palace. Her mansion also had a swimming pool, and as soon as she moved to her new castle, Amrita bought a brand new Mercedes. She had no learner's permit and so she made her husband drive her around. She also bought a beautifully made handcrafted golden swing from India and a couple of love hammocks made in the USA. Then, Amrita and Jimmy began to experiment with their new equipment. They exhausted more than the 101 sexual positions of Kama Sutra. They started collecting books and videos on the same subject so that they could imitate the most favored of the ancient sex positions. Kama in Sanskrit means pleasure. For Hindus, Kama Sutra is the Bible of sexual positions. Amrita discovered the beauty of love after she had lost all hope in life. By accident, she stumbled upon the tree of life and the forbidden fruit of pleasure and desire. Her life turned into an earthly paradise after having suffered for so long the evil abuse of selfish men for many years. She found someone to love her not because of her unmatched beauty or her millions of dollars, but because of her childish and innocent nature. After she fell in love and married her Uncle Jimmy, Amrita concluded that she needed nothing more in life except him. She just wanted to be with him and enjoy her life with him forever. Everything a young girl of her age might want from life, Amrita had obtained and surpassed and continued to enjoy every day. In her new castle, Amrita Khan lived her new life as queen of her universe.